Today I'm going to be presenting on mobile internet innovation, and the ideas that we'll be presenting are based off the fifth wave, strategic vision for mobile internet innovation, investment and return, which is written by Robert Marcus and Colin Timberlake. So what's my goal? The goal is to not do it as a cartoon, but instead to just teach everyone a little bit about the history of mobile internet, its impact, and a little bit on how to obtain value from it. So we start off with this idea of, there are two words in ancient Greek for time, chronos and kairos. Chronos, as everyone knows, is kind of the root word for a lot of words used that are related to time. It just refers to the passage of time. But kairos refers to something completely different. Kairos refers to a supreme moment when everything changes and everything comes together. And so what does that have to do with the mobile internet? So the author describes these different waves in technology, and the mobile internet is the most recent one in which he's describing. So if we start from the bottom, we start off with mainframes, which is the first real wave. And what this wave does is it creates a dramatic restructuring of the industry. So if you look, you have the primary player, IBM was here, and only like the Army and less than 30 other companies really could afford mainframes. So to move on, we have the mini computer. So what this did was it created a computer that was much smaller, a tenth of the price, but also created 10 times the size of the market. This allowed universities and small and mid-sized companies to be able to have access to computing power. So then we move on to the PC era, and we mostly think that era is dominated by Microsoft and the Wintel collaboration between them and Windows and and we also do remember Apple being this part of being part of this wave. But as a result, Apple decided to tightly integrate their hardware with their software, which actually ended up biting them in the butt. Microsoft decided to use commodity hardware instead, and ended up with a more cheaper alternative, which consumers adopted more. So then we had the desktop internet, and this created the client-server model and the ability for consumers to communicate with different mainframes in the back end. And what this caused, the invention of the World Wide Web, which led to eBay, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And now what we have is this mobile internet. So we'll discuss more about the mobile internet later. But I guess what the takeaway from this graph is that as each of these waves come, each of these kairos moments come, is these existing players have trouble innovating. And this is just like the disrupting technology paper that we talked about in the Harvard Business Review. So as far as the mobile internet, what really made it possible is this the advancements of these three pillars. We have telephone systems going from analog to digital. We have the wireless networks going from 1G to 2G, 3G, and now 4G. And we also have this rapid advancement in the internet and the creation of these e-commerce sites, these social networking sites, that everyone became so accustomed to that it became necessary for them to have access to at all times. So what happened is there are many attempts to try to capture this idea of mobile internet into a device, and we have the two-way pager up here, Palm Treo, and even Apple's device is Newton. But there was really one, the author describes as one really defining moment when it became possible, for people, for it to become kind of ubiquitous between accessing the internet on a mobile device and a desktop device. And this is the iPhone, right? So there were many different phones, many different attempts to create a phone that had the same capabilities as the iPhone, but the iPhone really set the standard. And what it did was it made using the mobile internet on a device not tedious, but enjoyable. Sorry about that. And also created the App Store, which made it possible for anyone around the world to create software that anyone else around the world can use. And we created a lot of opportunities. And it also set a precedent, that again, if you're going to create software, you make sure that it's, also accessible and easy to use on a mobile device. All right, so what, right? Mobile, you access the internet from a mobile device, you can access the internet from a desktop computer. What's the difference? Mobile devices help build, a personal identity. Desktop devices you share amongst your families and things like that. But there's something extremely personal about a mobile device. It allows you to, really personalize, your internet experience and things like that. So, and also the fact that you're always connected. Now, people get mad at you when you're not on Gchat for 2 hours or things like that. And it's, it's just completely different way of interacting. So we also have, an international impact, right? We have all these facts right here. Africa is the fastest growing region for mobile devices. India is the fastest growing country for mobile devices. China has the largest mobile market, etc. In 2011, 73% of the world's 6 billion mobile subscribers were in the developing world. So what this really means is that, sooner or later, everyone's going to be accessing the internet through a mobile device, as opposed to a desktop computer. We also have, a social impact. The author brings up, the idea of the Arab Spring, people being able to use, Twitter and Facebook to kind of coordinate demonstrations and rallies and things like that. We have the idea of the election that just happened, how Obama spent 10 times more than Romney, and we saw what happened with that. This mobile internet allows people's voice to be heard, and it creates a way for you to make an impact even more so than before. And now we have a new generation. The connected generation is what the author explains it as. So this connected generation, he explains it using the 4 C's. One of which is communication. Like mentioned before, our generation is always connected, right? It's kind of assumed that you should always be somewhere near a device or something like that. Content, right? At this point, everyone is okay with assuming content wherever, or taking in content from wherever they are, and are really, used to receiving their content in real time. We also have community, right? The author describes it, as having friends at the ready. This community is where, your social networks and things like that, where you're really able to connect with any of your friends at any time. And commerce. We don't really see the effect of it as much nowadays. People still use credit cards and cash, but you can see kind of this wave of new technology that's going to change the way we really we use money, the way we purchase things, etc. With Google Wallet and things like Square and things like that. They're just changing the way in which we go about doing normal things such as shopping. So I just went on about the history of mobile internet. So how do you obtain value from it? How do you become an entrepreneur? How do you create value from a mobile product? So what we're seeing is that we have there's more opportunity, but in order to really understand how to obtain value from it, we have to understand what we just talked about, the history of mobile internet. So the idea of going out and just obtaining funding and becoming Microsoft, obtaining funding and growing into this humongous corporation has changed a little bit, right? Funding has become more difficult, as I mentioned at the top of the heading. There's financial reasons obviously. In the past 10 years, we had 2 financial crises: the internet bubble and then the house crisis, things like that. And venture capital is a little more hesitant to just invest right away. There's stats saying, from 2001 to 2011, returns have dropped significantly. A lot of firms haven't actually had positive returns, and the ones that have an average, around something like a conservative bond. So, venture capitalists aren't that excited about investing. So we also have, the idea that private funding rounds are taking the profits out of IPOs. there's a lot of companies that, for instance, Microsoft, Cisco, et cetera, they really use their funding to build up the product, and then create an IPO and really use the public to build up their product. And a lot of cases, you're seeing it's not happening anymore. What's happening is that the private is kind of jumping on the one big idea, and such as Facebook, Groupon, et cetera. They're just jumping into that one big idea, and then what really doing is sucking all the the growth out of it, right? So we get it does an IPO, and it can't really grow as much as say the Googles and the Microsofts, et cetera, because there's a lot of value being taken from the private funding rounds. And also because of the crash in 2001, IPOs are a little more expensive than they are. There's regulations around it that made them harder to do. So what the author proposes is a plant nursery model. So it's very similar to the lean startup model, and it's saying that before the whole idea was to get a seed and grow it to a big tree, right? But what has happened is, as we mentioned before, is that the mobile internet has kind of changed things, right? Any Joe Schmo can go create an app and try to turn it into a real company. Anybody can every time you think of an idea, you look online, you see that someone's working on it, etc. So the market's become really crowded, and it's a little harder to really try to build this small idea to a much larger idea. So what the author suggests is that the plant nursery model really build your plant, and then make sure you nurture it as you're instead of feeding it, which is in longest getting funding. Really nurture the plant. Get your initial funding for bootstrapping, and then really focus on business and product development. So don't be too focused on going to private, obtaining the funds, etc. Instead, really focus on your product. And once your product is good enough, the larger companies who, as we mentioned before, have trouble innovating over these different waves will be able to obtain your product and really grow it into a tree. So the idea is a lot less focused on really trying to become this large corporation from a small idea, but more about really creating a real product. And what happens is that without really just focusing on the funding, is that you have less dilution of your shares. For instance, Pandora, he was trying to raise money for his company and wasn't really successful. And what happened is that he was almost running out of cash. He had to keep raising so much funding and diluting his company that by the time he got back on his feet, he was 2% of the company. So he lost a lot of his shares and things like that. And what this plant nursery model does is it really prevents that from happening. So now you have kind of an idea where you're getting as little funding as possible in order that you can still make a really good product, and really relying on the bigger companies who have trouble innovating to obtain the product and to grow it. So in conclusion, as I mentioned before, the idea of the mobile internet, really understanding what the mobile internet has brought, and really understanding the impact of the mobile internet is how kind of you understand the plant nursery model and its applicability. So, and that's it.
Who's up next?
Correct.
Next? Great.